Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 21 of the Future of Work show. For those of you who've been following our journey, we've been having conversations on the future of work from June this year. Several of our guests are prominent academics or prominent practitioners in the field, and they are the ones who have an idea to contribute that's going to be helpful for all of us to understand how the future of work itself is emerging. This month, the spotlight has been on the human resource function. And we started off the series with Chris Shankar coming on and speaking about the future of HR. Then we had Professor Anna Tavis of NYU speak about the performance management revolution. This was followed by a session with Arif Aziz, the CHRO of Diageo, as we spoke about what will it look like when the employee experience itself is personalized. And today, next on this series, is a conversation with Manvi Baveja, who's the Global Head of Organizational Development for Uber, on what it will take to build engagement in the gig economy. For those of you who are joining us for the very first time, I am Shalini Lal, and I work at the intersection of people and organizations and the future of work, both in an advisory capacity and as a teacher. A lot of the work that Uncube does is on tracking the trends, how the world is evolving, and trying to decipher what that's going to mean for all of us across different functions. What is it going to mean for leaders? What is it going to mean for organizations? Now, with that, let me bring on my guest for the day, Manvi Baveja. Hi, Manvi.
Hi, Shalini.
Thank you so much for joining me. Really, really appreciate it. And I'll tell you why, Manvi. As we started to, create this series around the future of work, one of the most prominent trends, of course, as you of all people would be very familiar with, has been this whole conversation around the gig economy. And I was for a long time thinking about, okay, so what would be a good way to understand more about how this plays out in real organizations? And when we met, I was just delighted and I thought, okay, this is so wonderful that you agreed to participate in this conversation because I know I'm going to learn a lot and I'm hoping that many of our other viewers are going to learn a lot about what it takes to make the gig economy successful and what does that mean from an organizational point of view. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely, Shalini. It's a pleasure. I've been hearing your conversations with other HR leaders from the other side of the screen. So it's good to be on this side of the screen having this conversation about, gig economy. It's such a fascinating topic, very real for Uber, but also very critical to the future of work. So absolutely excited for this conversation today.
Oh, thank you, thank you. So, Manvi, do you want to share a little bit about why you think the gig economy has sort of exploded in the last few years, and why you think, if you do, that is, that our future ways of working will always have a very large element of gig partnership?
Yeah, with your second question, actually, Charlie, maybe I'll invert it and respond to that first because it's good to lay the lay of the land first. Where are we headed into the future? What's happening right now? What are the trends we're picking up? So, certainly, I mean, if I were to quote some stats over here, Forbes has shared that 40% of the US workforce now earns a big chunk, close to 40% of their total income through gigs, and that gig economy is expanding 3 times faster than the US workforce. So you do a little deeper analysis, you get to know that a big part of this gig economy is actually relatively young people between the age of 21 to 38, so essentially millennials. They're also called the native freelancers. So they enjoy that freedom and they love to be part of this gig space. So where we're headed, Shalini, almost in 2040, as it's predicted, and it's no more, I guess, a surprise to anyone hearing to us today, that the future of work is going to be very, very different. It's not something we've imagined today. The skills are going to be very different, and it is going to be hyper accelerated growth that we will see on entrepreneurial spirits of people, the entrepreneurial ventures, peer-to-peer work, and contract workers. So all of this is going to be very real. So I think that what we're talking about today definitely is the beginning of that conversation, which is only going to get interesting. It's only going to get bigger as we go forward. Um,
Do you think,
so
Manvi, this is driven by changing people's aspirations, or do you think this is driven in equal measure by, organizations having needs which are fulfilled by having, gig partners or gig workers rather than employees?
Yeah, I think both, Shalini. On both ends, we seem to have evolved into a different space as workers. The way we were when in our generation, there were certain constraints that we came from or our parents came from, and we had a certain mindset about work. We looked at stability, being long term at work, and all of those things as very
Mhm.
central to our jobs. Whereas if you think about millennials, they don't come from that constrained mindset. So I definitely feel that there's an evolution in the context and in how I think workers today or people who are joining the workforce today have that mindset of freedom and innovation and creativity and feeling that flexibility. So that mindset definitely calls for this kind of flexibility in the workspace. So I think that's definitely evolving. From the company's perspective, also, I think there's a lot of fluidity. Instead of having very rigid boundaries, instead of really keeping everything under secrecy or silos, as we were doing, as I think it was the trend a little early on. Today, there is a lot about exchanging. Today, there's a lot about that interconnect and learning from each other and being more open. So I think that overall there has been an evolution both on the company side, on the needs, on the expectations of our employees as well.
Do you think that, in part, and this may or may not be true of Uber, I'm not asking about Uber, but more generally, do you think there are financial advantages which also drive organizations in that direction?
Absolutely. I think so. Gig economy, actually, if you were to look at it, I would sort of split it three ways from an individual perspective, from a company perspective, and even from an economy perspective, and a nation's economy perspective. I would say individually, there are financial gains to be made, right? I could be working three jobs. I may have constraints of looking after children, looking after elderly. So I would want to work at the time I can work and earn. Otherwise, if I'm in a regular job, I cannot earn if I have to look after, let's say, or give in to my constraints. So financially, it means independence, it means flexibility, even for an individual. It means I could also pursue a passion and see if that's something I want to take full time. Or I could earn from two, three jobs at the same time. In fact, there's a stat that tells us that 55% of these gig economy workers actually have one full time job while they have this other job. So, definitely financial benefits for an individual. At a company level, imagine I would take Uber's example over here. We have close to 5 million partners, delivery
Mhm.
partners, or driver partners on our platform. There is no way that they could have been on our employee base. And having them in this gig economy space gives us that scale, gives us that
Mhm.
global reach without having to fend for the cost that it may come with if they were our employees. So definitely at a company level also, it comes with a lot of advantages of scale, of being agile, and not having to fend for that
Mhm.
CTC, so to say. At an economy level, I think that it's even more fantastic because we have seen that unemployment rates have actually gone down with gig economy coming in,
Mhm.
and economies have also, I mean, obviously that also leads to decrease in delinquencies, and numbers have shown that more than just hunch or intuitively. Also, obviously it sort of makes sense, but actually right now you have numbers behind that. So it certainly provides that leverage at all these three levels financially.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. And I had, in fact, shared an MIT study on, how the economy, the US economy, it's a US-based study, has benefited from actually Uber more specifically, because people who would have otherwise, moved to an unemployed status found work, at least part-time work. So then let me ask you, Manvi, what is fundamentally different about building engagement with gig partners versus employees? Is there a
Yeah,
difference?
definitely. Definitely. I think there's a difference in how you engage your gig partners. Shalini, gig is where competition becomes really real. It's in your face. You have the same person who could be driving for the competitor. Actually, it's almost always the case, right? The same person is also on the competitor platform. So
Mm,
competition is really real. You have to engage them, therefore, in very, very meaningful and intentful ways. And this is
mhm,
a beautiful place where technology sort of marries or meets human behavior. I'll give you some Uber examples to add more context. Um, so we are talking about creating engagement for our gig workers. So what we did at Uber was we actually did sort of an empathy inquiry into what does it mean to be an Uber driver
mhm,
partner. So we sat down into cars and we said, all right, we will be, and leadership at Uber, we said we're going to be Uber driver partners for 1 or 2 days, and we actually had this competition who drives the most, etc. So we actually did that for a longer period of time, and we realized that it's not so easy. It's not as easy as picking up someone from point A and dropping them at
mhm,
point B. In between the calls, you're actually very anxious. Am I going to get my next pickup? Is it
mhm,
going to be a long wait? Is it going to be a short wait? Can I relax? Can I take a nap? So all of those anxieties we would never understand if we are just not in this space ourselves. So we took
mhm,
that plunge, we got in it, and we realized, well, this is real. So we
mhm,
come back, we bring this information back on the board, and we say, how do you help? How do you help driver partners with that anxiety? And we actually created an algorithm which now tells driver partners that, hey, if you're looking for work, this is the busy place in Delhi, or this is the busy place in Gurgaon. Move towards this place, and you'll get more and more, incoming pickup calls. So like I said, this is where technology sort
mhm,
of meets human behavior. You go in, you're trying to understand what is the most important thing for your driver partner, and then picking that up and turning that into technology and bringing it back to them to engage them. So I would say engagement has to be very real and meaningful. I'll also take another example. Our platform is, the Uber app is super easy to navigate. We're talking about very basic things like safety, trust, fairness, and how do you deliver that through technology? So I find that very fascinating too. We find technology such, so inhuman. Like we're like, this is technology. It's all machine. It's all wires. But you can actually convert these very important emotions into technology. So our app allows for family to see where the person is going if they're riding an Uber. You can actually share your ride. Or if you are an Uber driver and you want to see how much you've earned this week, how much are you going to get at what time, everything is transparently given to you in the app. So that builds that trust and fairness. And that, I think, is one of the winning features of why driver partners prefer Uber, is they actually say that there is a lot of transparency. I'm earning this much and I'm getting that without any hassle. Sometimes our partners say, well, we've had to forego a ride because the customer did not turn up. We don't
mhm,
go and we don't start doing checks if that was truly the case or not. We actually trust them and we make sure that they're reimbursed for that ride. So those little things which matter a lot. So knowing what is the motivation behind this workforce, and then tapping that, understanding that in an empathetic way, bringing that back and including that in your technology, creating it and making it the centerpiece of how you are bringing your product to them is, I think, our way forward in engaging them. Of course, we look at some of the basic needs, like in India, the demographic of our driver partners is that they belong to a lower strata, economic strata of our society. So making sure that they have the insurances in place. If they want to buy a car, a second-hand car, they don't have the capability of getting a loan because they don't have a past history of earning. We make sure that we can provide that loan to them. So there's obviously helping them at all those levels that are important to them, and meaningfully engaging them.
No, that's very interesting, Manvi. And I'm taking two or three ideas from what you just said. The first was this importance of having an experience of what is it actually like to walk a mile in their shoes. And with employees, you often get it simply because you were probably that person at some stage, of your life, or somebody at least who's at a senior level would hopefully have walked in those shoes for a while. But a lot of the gig jobs, like Uber's driver partners, but also say your Zomato delivery or you know Amazon delivery person, and so many are jobs which maybe people in the organization themselves may never have experienced. So one of the things I'm taking from from what you just said was the importance of having a personal experience of at least some of these roles so that you have genuine empathy for what it takes, and then using that empathy to create technology that meets some of these needs. And I can see how that would be true for Uber, because at the scale at which you operate, uh, you know I think technology is your primary engagement tool in a way. It's an engagement tool both for the customer as well as the driver, and as you said, the driver's family. So everything gets embedded in technology. In fact, we had a guest, Professor Guy Hoffman from Cornell, some months ago, and he made a rather interesting observation around how technology is often the supervisor now. And the example he gave was actually Uber's example. That for instance, in Uber, who is telling you what to do next, and who is tracking everything that you're doing? It is technology. So technology seems to be the supervisor in at least. So that's very interesting. Now, Manvi, one point that you spoke about some time back was how Uber helped its driver partners go through the 2020 loss of revenue in across the world. So can you share a little bit about that, and also share why do you think that's important, and would you say that that's something which other organizations should also think about when they're working with gig partners?
Yeah, absolutely. And that has rolling impact if you don't care for that aspect of gig economy. So what I'll start by sharing what we actually did, and I'll take a micro example of what we did in India, because we did very different things in different countries because the needs were very different. For instance, at the time that it was raging in Europe, there were free rides that we were providing because that was the most important thing to do. At the time of it was raging in India, the what came out was there was a lockdown, right? So nobody was out there. Even if you were an Uber driver, even if by any
Mhm.
means you were driving, there was nobody hailing a car. There was
Mm.
nobody who was wanting to
Yeah.
go anywhere. It was a lockdown.
Yeah.
So, and knowing that I just shared with you, the demographic of our driver partners in India are the ones that they solely depend on this job of, driving an Uber to get their month's expenditure. So we realized that immediately, and what we did was we got this whole thing going where we aggregated or we collected money and we started to distribute, put it into their just bank accounts and call them up and say, hey, we know you're not being able to travel, hopefully, or you're not being able to drive. Hopefully your families are okay. And we've put some token money to help you survive this time, hopefully a month or so. On an ongoing basis, Uber employees get this thing called as Uber credit. So we get some amount with which we can ride Ubers.
Mm.
We all collectively donated that money towards, again, funding the driver partners, their livelihood, the ones who are not able to get out there and sort of earn. So we did those things. Now, question that you asked me was, why is this important? We just spoke about how gig economy actually fuels the overall economy of a country as well. So at a micro level, of course, it leaves them upended. It leaves them in a space that they don't have means to take care of themselves. It's a gig economy. They no more can work or earn from that work. And so it means health issues. It means just regular livelihood issues. But at an economy level also, it actually disrupts the flow of an economy.
Yeah.
And how, so definitely I think one of the things that came out of Prop 22 that we are trying trying to do as Uber is really tie hands or join hands with other gig economy employers. And we are trying to build together a benefit scheme where actually if we can all as employers start to sort of towards it add some money to it, add some resources to it during such times
Mhm.
where a gig worker is not able to earn, can they actually take out money from that reserve and use it? So can we create those uh, avenues through which we can, the gig economy workers can survive a downtime? And that's where I think it's a beautiful connect to what we started our conversation with, because we said that 2040 is going to look very different.
Mhm.
And you are seeing these companies come up who are actually providing insurance for gig workers, which obviously never existed in the past. So you're seeing all these companies like Upwork come up where gig economy workers can actually put their profiles, look for work. So there is a whole new ecosystem emerging to support this new workforce as well. So definitely for continuity, for their continuity of individuals, continuity of the economy and the companies, we need to definitely make sure that there are some longer term sustainable ways in which we can support these workers in downtime.
That's a great example, Manvi, because now if I connect this to the first thing you spoke about, that how do we build engagement? You're speaking about, two different things. One is this whole element of in times of need, we will be around. And I think one of the greatest downsides of the gig work is just the uncertainty around income and the fact that like this year 2020 was definitely a very difficult year across so many industries, definitely yours being one of them. So this, you know unlike if you're employed and then you at least have some salary at the end, the fact that it might just disappear is a great cause of uncertainty and stress because everybody has expenses to meet. So I do really like the idea that many organizations who are working with gig workers in large numbers are thinking about what they can do to build a sort of umbrella in case of things going wrong the way that they did this year. The other part I liked about what you said was the generosity itself and how generosity is an important element of building trust. So if I were to put together both of what you said, Manvi, doesn't it sound similar to perhaps the way you'd build engagement in people who are within your organization, or are there elements that you genuinely feel are different?
I think it connects at a humanity level for sure. I mean, as human beings, and I'm not even going as far as quoting Maslow by saying, there are certain things that everybody wants that should be taken care of. So I think at that very basic level, definitely we are connected. I think the only nuance difference I would say is you get immediate feedback in gig economy. I mean, if you're not doing well in your engagement and if you're not supporting the workers in the right way, they leave your platform like that. Versus with employees, you have a little bit of a runway. You can still go back and you can still make sure they have some growth opportunities. There are some lateral growths, and there are various other ways to engage. Their motive of being there is a little different. And so therefore there's some nuance difference, but I would say at the end of the day, like you said, meeting them at a very human place or connecting or engaging them with those very basic human needs, that of course continues to be same across employees and gig workers.
No, makes a lot of sense, and I can see how this plays out for the Uber brand itself operating a certain way. And any organization which has been in the service business, like you are, has typically relied a lot on, who's at the front line, what kind of training would make them effective, what kind of, commitment, engagement would make them effective. So service organizations in general have really focused on the frontline employee, but here, you don't have a frontline employee as much as you have your frontline gig partner. And
Right.
therefore, the focus needs to be, at the end game is the same, that the customer is happy operating, on an Uber platform. So let me just take some of the comments. Anil Sachdev, hi Anil, so nice to see you. Nice to see Manvi, my former colleague, with you. Avnish says, how does one tweak engagement or L&D strategies for the gig universe, given gig workers are less sticky, so there is less to invest? At the same time, worker experience can be a key supply driver. What would you say to this, Manvi?
Yeah, I think, you know, learning and growth is actually coming out of the space of classrooms. And in fact, that's one of the things that is happening to regular employees. So at Uber, when we think about learning and development, we are not a big proponent of putting you in classrooms and teaching you or sending you through some courses, etc. We actually have an internal gig market going on in Uber, where you can sort of auction, or you can take up 20% of your time, put it in a different project. There is actually a platform that matches people who have some time and skills at their hand to what projects are available. So we highly encourage that people learn by doing. And gig economy itself also enables that. You can actually be doing 3 to 4 things at the same time and learning from all of those and bringing the learning from one to the other. It enables, Avnish, I'm guessing, students to be studying as well as, being part of the workforce and trying to see how what they're studying applies to the workforce itself. So, and then learning looks a little different for gig economy workers. It's very much it's very much connected to the business. So, for instance, at Uber, we know that it's very important for our customers, especially women customers in India, to feel safe when they take Ubers. So the kind of learning that we provide to our driver partners is very oriented towards that. For we have tied up with Manas Foundation, where we've trained more than 60,000 driver partners on how do you deal with women customers, how do you make them feel safe, how do you respect women customers when they come in. They go through regular orientations around how do you deal with customers, how do you deal with, and in different kind of situations. So it's very business oriented, it's very live, it's very connected to what's really happening in the role, in the job for that person. To that extent, an organization will go in and will support the learning endeavors, and it will be involved. But then I think there is a difference, obviously, with an employee versus a gig economy worker. And there you have that space of pursuing so many other things and pursuing all the moots and online available courses and be part of universities yourself and keep that learning going. So with independence comes that responsibility also, I think, a little bit for gig economy workers, because they cherish that independence so much, that you have that opportunity of learning from so many different sources.
Manvi, can I ask you a question, which might be a little bit sticky, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you think in India, for drivers, the motivation is similar? Like, I know that in the US, one of the motivations is, okay, I have a car. When I'm not working in my full-time job, or when I'm not pursuing my passion or doing whatever else, can I earn some money? Do you think the case is the same in India, or do you think people, say your Uber, partners, your driver partners, uh, it's an economic necessity. They're there because this is their source of livelihood, and perhaps they earn more on, driving an Uber car versus being a driver for somebody else. Do you think the motivation is a little bit different in India?
Definitely. I completely agree that the motivation in India and the kind of people who take up this work are different. So, India actually has, like I said, totally dependent, driver partners are totally dependent on this as their main source of income. This is their work, this is what they
Yeah.
do. So, versus obviously in the other parts, that may be the third or the fourth thing that they're doing, and they're only doing it over weekends, only to socialize, have fun, or just earn extra money. It's very different here. And so the motivation, and that's why I think that our where we meet them is at that very basic foundational level of making sure they feel safe, they have insurance, they have money, they have some kind of minimum wage going in, etc. Versus the kind of efforts we would do in other countries, would be much different. Like there would be more fun things that we may end up doing because we're just engaging with regular people who have 4 5 jobs, etc. So
Mm.
definitely to your point, Shalini, it's not at all sticky. It's true that India has a very different strata of our people who are opting in to be driver partners.
So, I mean, at a larger level, what I'm hearing you say is that if one wants to be successful as an organization with a large number of gig partners, then it's really helpful to understand what their big concerns are. What do they care about the most, which might be different, as you said, from one of the countries to the other country, and being the best at addressing that, because that's what will keep them engaged with you, along with the other things you spoke about earlier: genuine empathy, having walked in their shoes a little, having technology, because technology seems to be, the primary uh, platform for engagement. So having the technology configured in a way that it meets their needs as well as the customers. So embedding sort of your culture through technology, job related training, and then making sure that at least in countries like India there is a safety net for when things do go wrong, like they have in 2020. And that makes a lot of sense as the number of gig workers across the world increase. So I want to take a few more questions. Rajendran, hi. How do you ensure the brand position does not get eroded with Uber partners? That's a good question.
Yeah, we work really, really hard. So I think one of our biggest things that we believe in is that we have to maintain our category position. And while that's a business goal to go behind, what that translates into is all the things that we shared with you, which is our driver partners or delivery partners, and in India, of course, it's only driver partners, but more at a more global scale, these are delivery partners. We make sure, like Shalini, you mentioned, we meet them where it's most important for them, right? So you could do 20 things to engage. You could give them coupons, 20% discount, go eat at a restaurant. All those things are you're doing them because you're probably meeting them at a very surface level, versus if you meet them about what's most important to them, what's more central to their livelihood, to their lives, then you're engaging them very meaningfully. um, we ensure a lot of interaction between our employees and our driver partners as well. So, we often call them to our offices. We have live interactions. We try and understand a lot of what's happening to them right now. At a more tactical level, we have something called as green hub. So basically, a driver partner can actually walk in and have a conversation with an Uber employee to say, hey, I'm facing this problem or I'm facing this issue. So obviously all those connect points are there, but at a much larger level, we invest our money where it matters the most for our partners, and that's how we make sure that we're engaging them and keeping our category position with them.
So I think to see Rajendran's question on how do you ensure the brand position does not get eroded, what you're saying is that what Uber does is invest in the relationship with Uber partners, driver partners, and relationship frequent engagement so that they're able to carry the flag forward. That's
Yeah.
that's what you're saying.
And being there at the time of need, I mean, I think that's where the real relationship comes out, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I think that pandemic has been super difficult for everyone. It's been a testing moment
it's
of
been a
who are you
testing.
standing with, and I think that Uber was super agile to turn around its engagement strategies to address what's happening here and now and what's important in this time at this point. So really listening, being very close to your partners and really understanding what's most important to them and addressing that is our way of, eventually that will translate into brand equity,
Right,
right? So
right.
we go behind the relationship and the brand equity sort of follows.
And is training a component of brand positioning for you? How important is training?
Um, for our gig economy workers, like I said, it's very real time. So if we are looking at training for them, they have I think about 3 to 4 days of an orientation session of
Hmm.
just the app. training on the app. How do you use the app? How do you address a customer? How do you address these issues? What? So you're just getting started with the app, with the platform, with this new job. That kind of training, of course, is very important. It's super needed to get started. The other training that we do, or what we are intending to do with or working with them on, is, of course, like I said, closer to job, which matters or which sort of enables into a higher customer incoming, or enables them, or Uber, to be that preferred platform. So that is the second kind. I think that other than that, we don't really, and it's not also something that we've heard our driver partners ask for. They would much rather that we invest in other things with their children, support their children, and support other things in their lives, than offer them off the shelf sort of trainings.
Though I have to say, Manvi, and I mean, this is a real experience that I've had with drivers before the pandemic, when I was a very frequent user of Uber, asking, because many have worked for competitors as well, and asking them which they enjoy the most. And it's almost always, they like Uber. And when I ask why, they said, एक तो international company है, और दूसरा ट्रेनिंग अच्छी देते हैं. So that does seem to play into their faith in the organization, the quality of training they receive, and I'm sure the technology, the app must be addressing whatever it needs to address for them, that translates into their own higher levels of engagement with Uber compared to others.
Yeah.
So there's another question from Joaquin Munoz. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. How would you guide corporate inside conversation about gig workers' relationship with companies? Uber or Corner Shop are tech driven, but people caring support elements are delayed compared to tech. That's a toughie.
I am still trying. So I'll read that question again. How would you guide corporate inside conversations about gig workers' relationships with companies?
What I'm reading from this is
Yeah.
that there's a lot of technology in your relationship.
The human interface
Yeah.
is sometimes difficult to access and delayed at times. Definitely, and I would talk about, when Travis, who was the founder of Uber, along with Garrett Camp, when they put this idea together, their idea was that you get in and get out of an Uber without having any conversation with anybody. It's a seamless experience. So you get in, the person already knows where they have to take you. Your credit card is already uploaded on the app. You come out and the person has already got the money from your credit card. So it was always meant to be a very seamless experience. What we've tried to do is continue to make that seamless experience work, and therefore we do believe that it should, like, we are actually going a step further, and we're saying people shouldn't have to reach out to us through customer support. They shouldn't have to feel the need to call up and say, hey, this is wrong or that is wrong. The app should be sufficient, or the experience should be so smooth that that sort of hiccups don't happen at all. So we're trying to tackle it more at the source. At the same time, it is true that there is a delay. Like for you, if today you want to get in touch with Uber, you'd probably have to write an email, and there will be a call back to you. So you have to obviously wait for that call back, and you don't really have that provision of calling. And I believe it's a strategic also move for us. It's a strategic decision for us to say we'll always work towards making sure there aren't those instances for us to have such a big fleet of customer response representatives, etc. So we are on the journey. We're in the journey. It's going to take a little bit of time. There are hiccups along the way, but that's the reason. What we're trying to do is make the interface smoother, versus trying to build up an army which sort of responds to questions and problems.
And that's a business decision, I'm guessing, because I mean, at the same time, I can understand the need and desire. I mean, I have it as a customer for many of the organizations who I won't name, but you sometimes just want to speak to somebody, when you can't manage to get through the interface. So on the one hand, the interface, making the interface much stronger is a great response. And Perhaps,
And yeah,
as you said,
it pushes
yeah.
us to imagine what all could somebody want to know or ask or call for, and can we provide all of that through technology. So we're actually pushing our own limits to also to say how can we make this more seamless. But I'll also say that in for instance our one of our pilots that we have done, because we know that in some countries more than others this is a need. In Bangladesh, we've actually started a 24 by 7 call in customer support. So you can actually call in and you can say, I'm having this trouble. I mean, it's a pilot for us to see what happens.
Oh,
Does this change the engagement from countries in which it's more app based and it's a call back versus you can call anytime sort of a thing? So we are definitely foraying and trying to experiment. But till now, it has been a decision at the business level to say our technology should be so wholesome and strong that that shouldn't be the need.
I can understand that. Alice Rajendran, what kind of training is given to the driver partners to ensure safety and hygiene during COVID times, which we need both for customers and driver partners?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is so important to us. Or, we every week replenish the COVID resources for our driver partners. So they have had to come into our green light centers, which is where they can come in and speak with us, meet with us. They have special screens that have been put. So the driver is isolated with that special screen. They are not in direct contact of the air also. The air is also not common between them and the passenger. So first of all, we created that safety net within the car itself. Then they are given all these kits which have sanitizers, cleaners, and every morning they can actually clean their whole cars, and their supplies are renewed every week. So they can just drop into the Green Light Center and renew their supplies, from masks to sanitizers to cleaners to, if their screen has had some kind of damage, then they exchange that to, even in auto, not just in cars, but even in auto, we have made those screens, and we've put those screens in a lot of autos across India. So we're definitely safety first. That's been our biggest, I think, most central business strategy move thing to go after in 2020, safety first. And we've ensured that for our driver partners
Mm.
in a big way. So invested a lot in that direction.
Um, Avinash Desai, on social security front, are you engaging with government or insurance companies to have long-term solutions for your partners? I know you briefly spoke
Yeah,
about this.
yeah. So actually, in India, we've been very progressive. So while California is still trying to do Prop 22, the Motor Vehicle Amendment Act in India has actually been a very progressive and welcome change for us, where they have offered licenses to aggregators, which are valid for 5 years. There is a health insurance of minimum 5 lakh, and I'm just getting into nuances because the question demands so they have a health insurance of minimum 5 lakh and a term insurance of 10 lakh, which is, I mean, at the base of the year and increases by 5% every year. So there is a real time, we're supposed to, as a part of that act, we've been doing that even before the act came out. But now, as part of the act, every aggregator has to ensure this for their gig economy partners.
One last question, Manvi. What happens when your driver partner sort of doesn't follow the kind of service requirements that you have, or in the kind of customer interactions that Uber is, aiming for? Is there like what is? How do you get to know of this in the first place, and what's the process with that?
Yeah, of course, we get to know through our customers who escalate that to us. We have 3 levels of escalations. And if the escalation, and we have, even a neural language processor, even if there's no, I mean, there's at all times, there's somebody looking at that channel. But even if there isn't, if there are certain words that come through, it is an immediate response that we have. So we call up the driver partner, we start tracking them. We have obviously, we know where all our drivers are, and there's a GPS connection there. Very secured data, only visible to very, very select people at Uber, but that enables them to quickly catch on, make the calls, and enable like whatever support is needed. So we take it That's very, very, very seriously, that's most important to us. This is where we put a lot of our people, a lot of our attention. We And I think that our numbers and percentages of such cases have consistently been going down. So we work very hard at that, and we take it very seriously, and we're also ensuring that it is something that continues to decrease.
Thanks, Manvi. Actually, this was really, really helpful because I'm taking so many ideas from our conversation. Just the fact that when you're working with people who are gig partners, there are, at its fundamental level, it is ensuring that there is dignity for the human being who is in that particular role. There's dignity for the person, there's empathy for the person, a genuine understanding, and, then building from there into both making sure that their fundamental needs or their biggest needs are met wherever they might be, and the same thing getting built into the technology platform that becomes their primary way of engaging with the organization, but at the same time having in some opportunities at least for human to human interaction between employees and driver partners, so that that connect with the organization is always strong. I also found it very fascinating, the idea that having a safety net, not just organizationally, but you know maybe other organizations which employ a large number of gig workers coming together and seeking a more systemic solution where a safety net can be provided for times just like 2020. So there's a lot which I think anyone who is planning to employ gig workers can take from the experience that you yourself shared. Any last words, Manvi?
Yeah, Shalini, I would say a lot of our listeners, I mean, there was a lot of focus on Uber, of course, but I think like the gig economy workers exist outside of that. And, very early on, I said that millennials sort of have it as their second blood, or, they come with this independence and the air of independence of saying we are probably going to be gig workers and we prefer that over regular jobs. So there is obviously this whole space expands further off than just the people that we were talking about. The thing that I would like to end this very interesting conversation with is that don't think of gig workers as the ones who are only in it because they have those needs, or because they're fulfilling certain needs or certain economic reasons that they're into it. I think of gig as give it a go. Just gig as give it a go, because I think having a strategic side gig, as all of us should have these gigs. It helps us explore so much more of ourselves, gives us the opportunities to, let's say, be a blogger, be a vlogger, be an artist, be try something new and learn from that. And you could also have something as well. This is my fallback option. So when pandemics hit, when our lives get upended, there's something else that's also going on in my life. And how many times we are asked this question: what would you be if you're not your job, if you're not your position, who are you? And so all of this gives you identity, all of this gives you a lot of opportunities to learn and grow. So I would say, I mean, think of gig as something for yourself and give it a go. Look out for more of your passions, and sort of go and see where all your potential can take you. So
Oh,
that would be
that's
parting.
such a lovely idea. Give it a go. And something that perhaps anyone who's an employee can also think about. But of course, that leads me to ask you, Manvi, would, for instance, an organization like Uber actually be fine if its employees did have other gigs outside?
We actually we have a lot of I mean, people with entrepreneurial spirits. It's You have to just make sure what you're doing is not in contradiction with obviously what Uber does, and you shouldn't be earning substantial amount of money through that, versus you can actually take a flexible, like you could work at Uber for 3 days, work in your gig for 2 days, and you get compensated accordingly. So you declare it, and it's something that there's a lot of tolerance for at Uber, as long as it's not legally contradictory. So it's pretty much how that is.
Wonderful, because that's also, in a sense, a flavor of what the future of work is going to look like. increased personalization, increased flexibility in work formats. And I think your experience really gives us a picture of how it's actually taking place right here today. So thank you, Manvi. Thank you so much. I just loved this conversation. I know I've learned a lot, and I'm sure many of our viewers have learned many things about Uber that they can then think about when they're thinking about gig partners, either themselves becoming one in a different format or working with other gig partners. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much, Shalini. I really enjoyed the conversation and I loved how you put the pieces together for our audience. So I'm so sure that, even when I look back at it and I hear it again, there'll be so much for me to learn from it as well. So thank you so much for hosting me.
Thank you. Thank you, Manvi. So I hope you really enjoyed the conversation with Manvi. I was delighted to meet her a few weeks ago, and she's really smart, has a very good understanding of many things related to people and organizations, and we were really fortunate that she agreed to come and speak with us. As some of you might be aware of, we've been focusing on HR conversations. So the next conversation we have is on Saturday, and it's with Professor Jayant Narayanan of National University Singapore. And we're going to speak about evidence-based HR. So how do we use data to make better human resource decisions? And for those who work in the human resource function or know others who do, Uncube is also creating a program which is geared towards HR professionals of the future, which incorporates many of these big shifts that are happening in the world of people and organizations, so that HR professionals of tomorrow have a much deeper understanding of what it will take to make wise choices and wise decisions for that. With that, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you had a great evening. A recording of this will be available on my LinkedIn platform right after the show. If you like it, please share it on your wall as well. And of course, you can catch all our past recordings on our website, which is www.uncube.com. Thank you. Have a great rest of the day. Bye for now.